If there's ever a time that I needed a drink to read the YouTube video comments of mine, it'd be this video. I want to talk about a particular group that keeps cropping up, and that's the men's rights activists, or more commonly referred to as the MRAs. Now, I know what you're thinking, men's rights activists, at face value, that really sounds like a good, wholesome group that's really actively working toward making the world a better, safer space to discuss and act on men's issues and issues of equality, right? Now, to really understand what the men's rights activists are about, you actually have to look at the history. It really started first cropping up sometime around, I think, the late 60s, early 70s, around the same time as second wave feminism. In regards to careers, women were kind of getting the short end of the stick. They were kind of the stay-at-home wifeys, couldn't really go out there and have a career. So women finding that it was unfair that they couldn't have careers, men found it unfair for opposite reasons. In part, they found it unfair to be the primary breadwinners, and the idea that they wouldn't have to be the only ones bringing in a paycheck, great. And thus the beginnings of the men's movement was born. Now, the men's liberationists really have two parts to their story. The first being that initially a lot of them really teamed up with the feminists, because feminists have been tackling these gender issues, and a lot of them affected men, but in different ways, much like they still do today. And so they addressed together these ideas of gender and patriarchy. Now, that was all fine and good until roughly the late 70s, early 80s, when the MRAs, as we really know them today, began to emerge. They acted very much in large as opposition to many of the men's liberationists, and definitely as opposition to the feminists. Short story here is that these MRAs often viewed women as almost having too many rights, or more rights than what would be considered equal. And they viewed ideas like chivalry, which have been commonly considered patriarchal, as not patriarchal, but misandric. They as a group weren't really doing anything to advance men's rights and bring men's issues to the forefront as much as they were countering feminism. I'm not going to say that there aren't issues that the men's liberationists or MRAs have been talking about that affect men disproportionately. So whether that be child custody, alimony, domestic violence, and rape, they're all very, very unique problems in their own way that impact men, but MRAs today, they're not really addressing that. So from many of the modern MRAs that I've seen, like specifically those on our men's rights and in YouTube comments, aren't really having a productive conversation that benefits men. And in fact, many of them come off as misogynistic, whether they are or not. They haven't seemingly evolved beyond being anti-feminist. They haven't really worked on making a safer, more open space for men to deal with issues that are often taboo. For example, instead of actively trying to address a certain need for men, such as rape and domestic violence towards men, which is very underserved, as many of you know, instead of maybe creating a shelter or a safe space at a shelter specifically for them, they focus more about complaining about the women's shelters and how they don't help men. They're not actively trying to make change beyond complaining. Maybe there's something that I'm missing here. I am not an MRA. I don't speak actively in their communities. I occasionally visit the Reddit forum. But I want to ask you guys, is there a MRA site or group that actually is constructive towards addressing men's rights without either doing one of three things: complaining about feminism, complaining about women, and actually actually doing something, actually talking about the discussion in a positive manner and not like, misandry. Prior to making this video, I tried really, really hard to find something, but I kept running in circles, and everything that I found was either one of those three things. Now, I will say there is one website that I frequently go to that actually discusses men's unique issues when it comes to gender. And many of which that I didn't even realize, and in a positive light. They don't bring up really the MRAs or the feminists hardly at all, and that's the goodmenproject.com. They're amazing. They have a Twitter. I recommend you check them out. That's my very brief history of men's rights. I wanted to make a longer video out of this, but I don't know how productive the conversation is going to be, which is why I have my wine. But please leave a comment or a video response. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. I do think there are very important issues that affect men, but man, the MRAs, not very good at tackling them. Let me know your thoughts, especially if you're an MRA. I'd like to hear from you if you're actually willing to have a conversation. So that's all, guys, and hopefully I will be back next week. Bye.